Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this episode of podcast Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians. And today I want to talk about one of the most pressing topics that I think it keeps coming up in so many different conversations in the humanitarian world. And the conversation is around use of power. And I will not be talking about all the world events and what's going on the tragedies, um, because I think there are already so many people who are speaking about it, talking about it, and doing their best to um, fight for the justice, basically, right? But what I want to talk about power in the context of individuals, each of us, how we're using that power, why we need to be very conscious and aware of how we're using our power in order not to create more damage, either for ourselves, for someone else. And I really wanted to do this episode as to the tool of power that we all have and being aware of how we're using it and is it serving us. This is the topic. So let's start with the definition of power. And I have actually struggled so much to, excuse me, find the definition that would be very like down to earth to every one of you who's listening, watching, can actually, excuse me, apply and then like run with it, because the dictionary definitions were too abstract or too academic, I felt. So that's why the definition that I am using for myself and I would like to offer to you is the definition of power, that is our ability, each of us individually, our ability to do something to influence ourselves or to influence someone else. Right. So our ability to do something that will make the changes in our lives or make the distractions, depending on how you use it. And the same goes for someone else. And I really want to talk briefly about why we need to talk about this power, and so that you don't think of it as like, oh, this is something, I don't know, for politicians talk about it or for people who is influential or whatever. I don't really need to talk about it, or I don't really feel like I'm powerful, whatever it is that your perception might be. I really want you to think about these things, is that the reason why we need to talk about power is because if we're not using power in the way that's useful, that is serving us, that is like using our power to the good use, then we might be creating destructions. We might be creating suffering. If we are not using the power in the way that's powerful to us and powerful to someone else, feeling empowered and empowering others, or trusting their empowerment, whatever the way that you want to see it. If we're not doing it, then we might be just adding to those inequalities. We might be contributing to inequalities that we actually do not want. And I want to illustrate with certain examples later. So stay tuned to find out more about it. But what I really want you to think about is, depending on how you use your own power, because each of us individually have our own power, depending on how we use it in relationship with work colleagues, in personal life. Depending on that, we create the prosperity and balance for ourselves and for someone else, or we create suffering for ourselves and someone else. And that's the one of the biggest reasons, if we don't want to keep contributing to inequalities that we're actually fighting against, right? If we don't want to keep contributing to injustices that we're actually fighting against, then we need to be so super aware of how we're currently using power. Now, let's now get into how we tend to use power usually. And I really want to give you 4 categories that I see so often. And those are so relevant for us as humanitarians, for us as who is working on fighting for the justice, fighting for equalities, fighting for human rights, fighting for women's rights, right? Whatever the rights you're fighting for, or persons with disability, whose ever rights you are fighting for, to create those equalities, to create those equities, to create those resources for everyone. When we are thinking about that, I think there are 4 ways that we are using power. First is we have the power, and I'm choosing the words carefully. So notice when I'm saying we have the power, each of us individually, no matter whether where our conditions are, we have the power to make ourselves powerless and someone else powerful. And I will give you examples for each of them. I just want to give you an overview of 4 categories for you to be having the structure in your mind, right? So first is we have the power to make ourselves powerless and someone else powerful. That's the first category that I see so often, and unfortunately that keep creating so much suffering. The second is, and it's not in hierarchy, right? But I'm just saying for clarity. Second is we have the power to make ourselves powerful and someone else powerless. That's the second category. The third category is we have the power to make ourselves powerless and someone else powerless as well. And the fourth one is we have the power again to make ourselves powerful and to make someone else powerful or empowered, whatever the word that feels good to you or feels relatable to you, use that, because I understand that power has also a lot of negative connotations, negative associations. But I really want you to think about power is used as a tool in the way that destroys or in the way that creates, in the way that shapes. So how are you using that power is so crucial. Now let's talk about the first one, which is when we make ourselves powerless and when we make someone else powerful, and how do we know that? When we do that, some of the examples you already know, some of the examples maybe you may not think about is that some of the examples you may know is that when we blame someone else and we put ourselves in the victim position, we are making ourselves powerless and someone else powerful, the person who we are blaming. And how do you know that is because you keep thinking and feeling like you can't really do anything about it. You feel like the other person is at fault. How could you? When you're doing that, you are making yourself with your own thoughts, with your own feelings, powerless. You are telling yourself that you can't do, you can't change, you can't make anything, da da da. And that is how you're making yourself powerless. And the way you're making someone else powerful is you keep blaming and putting the responsibility to the other person, but also you keep thinking about that person. You keep hating them. You keep, I don't know, telling how they're horrible or whatever it is that you're telling. And you allow yourself to um, to get influenced by their behavior so much so that you're not focusing on anything else, right? This is when you make someone else powerful. And the reason why the other person is becoming powerful is because in your mind, in your head, you are letting their behavior to influence you so much so that you're not thinking about anything else but the other person. This is how you make someone powerful in your head and yourself powerless, right? That's one of the many examples that I will be giving. The other example that I see is that we often tend to make ourselves powerless and someone else powerful is when we use external circumstances like titles. like work experiences, like the past, right? So let me give you one example. As I was discussing with one of my clients actually yesterday about this, is uh, like when we have this dynamics of international versus national, and national colleagues often feeling like um, I have no power as much as the other person, right? In terms of the titles, in terms of the responsibilities. And whenever we're thinking in those terms, we often then tend to feel like we are not as powerful as they are, or we are not as important or as influential, whatever it is. And therefore, that tends to affect our way of showing up in the workplace, doing the things. Um, and while the factual things may be true in terms of the other person having maybe more experience or more years of experience, or more responsibilities, or the title that's different than yours, but as long as you keep thinking that I am not equal to the other person, or I will never be equal to the other person, I will always be less, or whatever it is that we keep thinking about our own position in that context, then it will keep affecting us in the way that keeps making us feel powerless. And then when we keep feeling powerless, think about what are the things you're doing, what are the things you're not doing, and what are the things you would have done if you felt like you are powerful as they are. Right? Think about it. What would you be doing, or how would you show up if you really felt like you are very powerful in that context, because you want to make these changes, you want to contribute to these causes, and therefore you're using everything within your power, even though there are limitations that are imposed by the organization. But if you kept feeling powerful in that context, how would you show up and what would you do differently? Right? So this is what I mean when we say when I say about how we tend to make ourselves powerless in so many circumstances, using the external circumstances as a reason why we should be feeling now powerless, or it is obvious that now we're powerless, right? And then that keep then influencing the way how we are advocating for the rights of the people that we want to advocate for. And that's why my advocacy here is really thinking about how you keep feeling powerless, and you keep thinking of yourself less than someone else. How is that affecting the way you're creating your impact that you want? And do you want to be impacted that way by the other person, or by their titles, or by their experience, by their past, whatever it is? Do you want to be influenced by them so much that you're not showing up, or you're not doing the work the way you want to? Or you want to just say, these are the facts, these are the way things are established or things are structured, but I still want to feel powerful in the way that I want to make the changes, in the way that I create the impact I want, so that I feel good about myself and my contribution at workplace, right? And that's, I think, worth for us to really think about how we're using our power in that way. The other way that I see oftentimes humanitarians making ourselves powerless in someone else powerful is when it comes to systems or structures, especially when it comes to maybe applying for jobs, right? We are approaching it like job applications or job interviews. We often approach it as it is something that we're doing, but we don't really have any control over. And therefore, we just do it a lot of the times for the sake of doing it. Or even if we feel like it's so suiting for us and it's so um, exactly what we want, but then we don't really go all in on doing that, or all in on believing that this can work, because we make ourselves powerless from the beginning to say that, oh, even if I do all the things, probably will not work. Even if I apply all the way, or even if I do everything that's within my control, it still won't work because they already have someone, or they probably already know someone, whatever it is that we tell ourselves that will make us feel powerless. And we make them powerful by keep assigning all the responsibilities to them or all the power to them, and we rob ourselves of the power that we actually have, and we don't recognize that power. We don't recognize the power of we could do everything we within our power. We could go all in. We could try to do all what's possible, right? That we like and we want to, and then keep going and doing all the like other parts of the application and believing that if this doesn't work, but the other one will, because I want to really create the opportunity that I want. I want to work on the job that I want, and then going for that. And oftentimes we may feel like we don't really have the energy and time and really like spark and drive to do that, because we are again busy feeling powerless in our work in other capacity. We feel we keep feeling powerless, we keep feeling drained, we keep feeling overwhelmed. And I'm not saying that it's we need to take all the responsibility for everything, right? But I'm understanding and I'm like sharing that there are lots of systemic, structural, bureaucratic obstacles, absolutely. But if we are choosing to stay and work in that environment, then what we need to really think about, okay, do I really want to keep giving them so much power and keep making myself powerless by saying that, oh, I can't really do anything, I have no choice and whatever, or I proactively decide what to do with it, and I proactively decide how to show up and how to do my work, how to create the impact I want, knowing the obstacles that are already there, right? So that's why these are the ways that I see that we make ourselves so powerless oftentimes, is when we keep going into the blame energy, into the defensive energy, into the attacking energy. When we are in those energies, we eventually make ourselves powerless and someone else powerful. Or we do that with things like with the titles, with the privileges, with the money. I think money is oftentimes a topic where we make someone else so powerful, excuse me, and ourselves powerless. For instance, when we're talking about donors, right? We take their money, we make them so powerful. And the way that we know that we're making them so powerful is because we drop everything else, what we're doing to service them, to show them around. Excuse me. So that's how we make money so powerful. Or other ways that we make money powerful and us powerless is when we say, I can't really do any other job that would pay me as much as this one, and therefore I have to just keep working here. This is when we make ourselves powerless in front of money, right? So money becomes so powerful and deciding factor that influences whether we can leave our job or not. You can see that how we're making ourselves powerless and something powerful. Or another way that I see oftentimes people do it is that when we make money powerful so much that even if we could solve a lot of problems with that investment, with that money, for instance, with coaching, with therapy, with all the other means that money can buy, instead of doing that, we so focused on keeping that money, holding on to that money, instead of solving all the problems or getting the help we need to get to the thing that we want to, so that we are no longer making money powerful, where money decides everything, but rather we are the ones who are deciding because we have the power, and we hold the power because we are the one who creates that money, right? So oftentimes I see that we make money so powerful because we believe that it's not really us who's creating that money, it's somehow the organization. But no, the organization is paying you, but you are providing work for them, right? So It's not like the organization is creating money. You are the one creating money. But I think our brain is so programmed to believe that it's the organization, the institutions, they are the ones who create the money, and therefore we just need to work for them. And again, don't get me wrong, that if you want to work for an organization, amazing. I just want you to always think about how you are still in power, in charge as to whether to work for them or not, whether to make them powerful or not in your mind, right? Whether to make them so powerful that you make yourself powerless or not, it's totally up to you. And this is what I really want to keep talking about in so many different ways. Now, let's think about the next category, which is when we make ourselves powerful and someone else powerless. And this is also so many examples that we can think about. One of the examples is that when we use our authority, or when we use our authority from the organization, or the titles from the organization, position from the organization, to shut someone up, or to dismiss someone's opinions, or to ignore them, to abuse the power, right? To promote someone over someone else, or to make favoritism, whatever it is, since I'm talking about toxic environments this month. So this is so fitting, right? So when we are using power that way, where we make ourselves powerful at the expense of someone else feeling powerless, these are the moments when we are creating inequalities. In the previous category, by the way, we're also creating inequalities by making ourselves powerless and someone else powerful. Is we are telling basically ourselves that we don't have as equal rights as they are, or we don't have equal capacity or equal power to change things as they are, and therefore we make ourselves powerless. In the second category, the same, right? So we're using our power of authority, or we are using our power as this in this position to make someone else suffer, to make someone else belittle or diminish their contribution, or to make them feel like they don't really their work is not really valued, or this power, authority, or power abuse can get even further in illegal conduct, such as harassment, sexual harassment, right? Favoritism is also illegal, obviously, but oftentimes this is so prevalent that people don't even think about it. So think about it. When we use the power in that way, where we are abusing the power basically, and we're abusing the power to our benefit at the expense of someone else, right? Then we are again creating suffering. We're creating injustices. We're creating inequalities. That's why we need to always be aware of how we're using our power, right? And sometimes we may be even doing these things knowingly, uh, especially when it comes to harassment or sexual harassment, right? Bullying, mobbing. We know that this is not legal. We know it in many workplaces. I think by now probably in the humanitarian sector, right? We know that this is an illegal behavior. Many of us probably do know that, but we keep indulging ourselves, or we keep engaging ourselves in those activities. Now, the question is always for us to think about the consequences of that for someone else. Because whenever we're abusing the power in that way, we may not feel the consequences immediately, or we may not feel the negative consequences, maybe even at all, because we are so much in the holding the power position, while for someone else it can have very severe consequences. And if we want to be those good people, like we always say, right? We want to be the people who want to fight for the justice, fight for equality. If we want to be in that position and really truly are that person, then obviously what we're doing is wrong. And therefore, if we don't want to contribute to that inequality, injustice at workplace, while we are fighting for justice and inequalities for other people, then it will make us hypocrites, to name the least, right? And if we don't want to be those people, then we need to be aware of how our use of power is making feel someone else. How is our use of power is making someone else experience their work experience. They are how that they are taking it at home. All of this we need to be very aware, especially at the positions where we hold power by position, by organizational structure. The third one is when we make ourselves powerless and other people powerless as well, right? And I think this is like one of the most prevalent also conversations we may have, where we feel like we can't really do anything, we can't really make changes, we can't really do anything even if we tried, and then we also don't really believe that anyone else can, and then we just have this collective feeling of powerless, feeling of like keep doing things. Somehow we're doing all the things, or we're trying to do all the things, but in the end, the outcome is not what we want, or outcome is so little that we're frustrated anyway, right? Or we feel like we just keep talking about things, we just keep changing things, we just keep trying, and we have lots of like energy into it, and then in the end, what we want to show for is not as big as we hoped, or as not sustainable, or as not structurally changing, and therefore all of us feel powerless, and then we just feel about everyone else powerless as well, and then we have this collective sense of what's the point. And it's very difficult to work in such an environment. And I would actually see of those environments as being some of the toxic, in the sense of how everyone's mood of what's the point gets contagious to everyone else, right? Gets spread to everyone else. And the fourth one is the most important part that I really want you to think about, is that we all have the power to make ourselves powerful and to make others powerful as well, in the best sense of the word, right? So think about how could that look like? And that's really what I want you to think about most, in case you are struggling with the previous three categories. I really want you to think about how could you make yourself feel powerful all the time, and someone else powerful as well all of the time. So this is when we need to think about examples of how it could look like, and also how do we create that power, right? So examples of this could be when we not only respect and value our own contributions and our own experience and our own role, but we also as much value other people's experience and other people's contributions, and we're wanting to talk to them, we're wanting to collaborate with them, we're wanting to team up with them so that we can fight for the equalities, for the justices, in the way that is most powerful. And that's when we come up with, or when we approach it with our most power, right, of how we want to make those changes, and we have other people who are also approaching it that way, then it becomes like a beautiful synergy of so many different powerful people who's respecting each other, who's valuing and cherishing each other's experience, and then coming together to make things work. Now, we may always be skeptical about it and say, well, it never happens, it never existed, da, 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 da. Maybe that is the case so far, but we still are able to, and we have the power to contribute or to creating that type of environment if we all individually tried and wanted. There may always be certain problems, which always there will be, where there's a group of people more than two, right? There will always be, and that's fine. That's part of the process. But there are also certain unnecessary suffering, unnecessary noise, or unnecessary problems that we could avoid by us feeling powerful about ourselves, secure about ourselves, feeling confident about ourselves, which all contribute to feeling powerful, and then trusting the other people also having those things, and then coming together, working together. Now, the question becomes, how do we create that power? How do we make ourselves powerful and other people powerful as well? One of the first things is we need to start feeling our own security, our own confidence, our own trust that we are amazing as we are. And even if we're not amazing in certain areas, we're working on them, right? We have the expertise, we value our work, we value who we are and what we're capable of, so that we're not struggling on the fundamentals, so that we're not like making things personal and keep struggling over personal things, but rather we are like we have the foundations of all what we need to be doing that work, and then we're focusing on that work. That's one amazing way to create power, is recognizing our capacity, recognizing our contributions, our expertise, our who we are, of what we're capable of doing, right? So these are the package of how we can create that power, how we can feel powerful to be doing the things that we want to. Excuse me. Another way to create feeling powerful is when we have so much conviction, so much belief, so much faith in what we do and how we do it, right? When we have those type of convictions, excuse me, then we are definitely keep creating powerful. Because even if we are not really getting to where we want to, even if there's so many obstacles, but because of those convictions, because of our beliefs that we want to work on this, we want to fight for this justice, we want to be useful to those people who are suffering, when we are in that energy, in that place, we keep generating power. And then the third way that is so often not really looked at, I think, but talked about, but not really felt maybe, is the realization of how we all have choices. And those choices are that we can choose what to think about ourselves. The choices are we can think and feel whatever we want about ourselves in the sense of how we feel confident or not depend on how we think and how we think about ourselves, rather than how we don't have this and we don't have that and we need to get this and we need to get that, and then just keep feeling like we never have all the things, or we never have enough. I heard recently someone talking about this patriarchal hidden agenda that made women especially keep doubting themselves, keep second guessing themselves, so they are not uh, equal partners at the table discussing world issues and different issues. And therefore, this was like designed from the beginning by patriarchal oppression of women to keep creating so many circumstances or occasions where women feel uh, doubting themselves and second guessing, or like keep saying, oh, what's wrong with me, or maybe something wrong with me. And then when we keep being busy with those type of scenarios and thoughts, then we're not really equally showing up at the table discussing issues that we really want to discuss, right? And I don't know if it's true or not, obviously, but I just heard this theory, and then I was thinking, interesting, that in some ways I can understand how um, it is true, in the sense of how when we are so busy with our confidence issues, with our doubt issues, with our whatever other issues, we're not really equally participating in the conversations as much as we want to, maybe. And therefore, it's time for us to think about how we settle certain discussions about ourselves so that we can focus on what matters to us. And I'm not saying that we will never be growing and improving all the things that we want to about ourselves, which is amazing, and let's continue doing that. But let's not do that from the perspective of I can only do that and then I will be able to equally participate, but rather I can already equally participate in all the discussions, in all the contributions, whatever it is that I feel equal and I want to, and I have the confidence, I have the contributions, I have the value that I want to provide, I have the expertise I want to provide. And also, I want to keep improving myself and working on myself. And that's a beautiful thing, right? This is what I'm suggesting for you to think about. So, when we are aware of how we create power, and we create power with our thoughts, with our beliefs, we create power with our feelings. We feel powerful, we feel confident, we feel empowered, we feel convicted that we want to fight for this cause. We feel so eager, driven. These are all powerful ways of approaching things. We feel proactive. We feel no longer surviving, but rather in charge, right? All of this, and we take responsibility. All of these are powerful ways to approach things. And those feelings then lead us to be taking actions, taking massive actions, taking actions that really create the impact we want to. And we start creating these choices for ourselves, choices of where to work, choices of how to work, choices of how to create the impact, choices of whether to stay in this operation or in this job or in another one, choices of really knowing that we have the ability to make this work here. And if not, then we go somewhere else and do something else, because we're not making money powerful, but we're making ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions powerful. We're making our ability to create the results that we want powerful, more than any external circumstances, more than anyone else. And that is my advocacy for you today, is find as many ways as possible to focus on how you can make yourself feel powerful, how can you make feel someone else powerful, by trusting them, by respecting their opinions, their expertise, their contributions, and getting them more to working on the cause that we want to, so that we're not really focusing on office politics, or focusing on frustrations, disappointments about people or about ourselves, and then just not being able to then work on the cause that we want to. So that is my advocacy. So, my dears, if you want to work on this topic of making yourself powerful, making your teams powerful, and moving away from keep creating powerlessness, then absolutely come coach with me. I would love to coach you to get you to the place where you feel like I can do this in whichever I want to in my life. I can create the impact I want to. I can do that with these teams, with these people. I can do it with others, but I feel so powerful that I can do the good in the world that I think many of us trying to do. So have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you very soon.